African Americans built this nation. You built this nation. You know, you're just starting to get real credit for that. Okay, I don't know if you know that. You're just starting to get, you built the nation. We all built it, but you were such a massive part of it. Bigger than you were given credit for. Does that make sense? Right? African Americans built this nation. You built this nation. You know, you're just starting to get real credit for that. Okay, I don't know if you know that. You're just starting to get, you built the nation, but you were such a massive part of it. Bigger than you were given credit for. Does that make sense?
All right. I mean, damn. They say, yeah, I'm using they in quotations. I'm using how they use it. They say Trump is a white racist. Okay, interesting. For those who are against racism, but can't give us the same flowers that Trump give us. That is mind-boggling to me. How can a racist give us our flowers, I just do, over non-racists? How does that work? How does that make sense? Yeah. Go sit down. Yeah. How does that work? You dig? So, I don't know, man. I would think the racists would be the people who don't give us flowers. Deservingly so. You dig? You ain't got to overflower us. But, you know, we'll take some roses. We'll take some guns and roses. Marquise, Carlos, let's get it. Carlos, who else out there? Claude. All right. So, yeah, so this is going to be a good one, right? We're going to learn this together, right? Because I know a little tiny bit about this. This ain't really my lane like that, although I got some interesting things. All right, so I'm like, you know what? Let's read it together. All right, so we'll know for sure what it is. No speculation, guessing. He said, she said, hearsay. Okay, so the Dawes Rolls were federal government list created between 1898 and 1906 to determine official citizenship in the 5 civilized tribes: Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole nations. As part of the Dawes Act and the Curtis Act, these lists laid the groundwork for breaking up tribal land into individual allotments and ultimately stripping native nations of communal land. But the Dawes Rolls also imposed a racial caste system. Who is surprised? Separating tribal members into categories that often included white people while excluding many Black people, even if both had legitimate claims to native ancestry. Okay, so when people, what's this mean to you, folks? If folks got native ancestry, did they come off the boats or were they already here? Right, so when people tell you they got native ancestry, you might want to fall back because you might be sounding like these people. They were denying these folks the ancestry at the time where they could prove the ancestry. So Dawes Rolls classifications. Tribal members were listed in one of several categories by blood. Those considered full or part native based on descent from a tribal citizen. Freedmen, so you got the freedmen, former slaves of the tribe or descendants of those slaves, granted tribal citizenship and post-Civil War treaties, e.g. Treaty of 1866. Intermarried whites, non-natives legally married to tribal citizens, minors, underage dependents of someone already on the rolls. What does by blood mean? So let's get into it. The by blood, in quotations, classification was not based on DNA or any formal science. It was based on appearance, ancestral documentation, affidavits, testimony, bias of the Dawes Commission agents who were white. So this whole by blood, get down from there. So this whole by blood thing, I thought it was some science behind it. Turned out it was scientific racism to some degree. All right. So if the Dawes agent believed someone was Indian by blood in quotations, they would be listed as such, even if they were mostly white or appeared white. But if a person was dark skinned or identified as black, they were often relegated to the freedman role, regardless of whether they had tribal ancestry. Yeah, it looked like a conspiracy to me. How does hurt black citizens with native ancestry? Many black people had legitimate native ancestry, especially among the Creek and Seminole, who intermarried more than other tribes. Yet they were still excluded from by blood rolls and placed on freedmen rolls, which limited land rights, excluded them from full tribal membership later on, led to loss of benefits, voting rights, and recognition today. So some of y'all don't recognize these folks today, and you don't know that you are acting as an agent of white supremacy. Interesting, because they say we have those talking points. Today, many tribal nations use the Dawes Rolls to determine citizenship, a pseudo list, basically. A pseudo-racial list. If your ancestor was listed as freedmen and not by blood, you are often denied tribal membership, even if your bloodline is the same as someone on the by blood roll. Right? Irony. White people were included more easily than black natives. White people were included more easily than black natives. Some light-skinned or white passing people were included as by blood, even with questionable documentation. White not say so, basically. Whites who married tribal members were listed as intermarried citizens with full legal standing. Meanwhile, black people with native parents or grandparents were routinely denied by blood status. So you have black people, that's interesting, with native parents. So, all right. This reflects the broader racist hierarchy of the time. Blackness was disqualifying, whiteness was legitimizing. Okay. So here are case examples. Sarah Rector, and I'm going to get into her very shortly. So I got a video called Sarah Rector, right? Who is Sarah Rector? So Sarah Rector, listed as a Creek freedman, despite being a tribal member under the 1866 treaty, not considered Creek by blood, which limited her recognition even though she received land. Descendants of Black Seminoles, known for centuries of cultural and military alliances with the Seminole Nation, excluded tribal citizenship today because their ancestors were put on the freedman roll, not the by blood roll. Interesting. Okay, so just a quick summary. By blood included white passing natives, some whites with claims, excluded many black natives, freedmen. Okay. Then we have freedmen, which included enslaved blacks or their descendants, denied full tribal rights later. Intermarried whites, married to tribal citizens that included them, excluded, got full status even without ancestry. Wow. No by blood at all, but because they married, full status. Right. So let's talk about it. Okay. So the legacy today, the Dawes Rolls locked Black Native Americans into a second-class status that persists in tribal politics today. Tribes like the Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole have been challenged in court by freedmen descendants for full recognition. It also created a system that whitewashed Native identity and elevated whiteness as the default for legitimacy. Right? Okay, so now we're going to get into, oh, I got to go up. I got to go up. Let's go up. Matter of fact, let me go up without sharing my whole damn screen. Okay, so we're here. I'm here. Another quick good read. It did stuff I didn't know. I'm learning for the first time. Miss Nikki Peace, Reverend Green. Thatch, Ohio. We got V4 Avengers in the building. All right, this ain't gonna be a long one. It's gonna be a short one. Dig. Okay, so let's go back in line. All right. So the question now. So now we know about Freedmen, right? Creek Freedmen. Now we know about Creek Freedmen and the Dawes Rolls. The Dawes Rolls is on some BS. But now, who was Sarah Rector? Y'all gonna love this one. Who was Sarah Rector? Born March 3rd, 1902, in Indian Territory, Oklahoma. Background: descended from Creek Freedmen, Black people who were once enslaved by the Creek Nation and later emancipated after the Civil War. So Creek Nation had to come for a check. All right, so Creek Freedmen and the Dawes Rolls. So I already talked about this, but I'll read it again. Historical background after the Civil War. The Treaty of 1866 between the U.S. and the Creek Nation required the tribe to emancipate enslaved people and grant them full tribal citizenship. Freedmen were listed on the Dawes Rolls, 1898 to 1906, a registry used by the Dawes Commission to assign land to tribal citizens as part of the Curtis Act, which aimed to dissolve tribal land holdings and force assimilation, right? So the Dawes Rolls separated Creek members by blood, in quotations, intermarried whites, quotations, and freedmen, in quotations. Okay, now, Sarah Rector and her family were enrolled as Creek Freedmen, meaning they were not considered Creek by blood, which later became a point of contention for land rights and tribal citizenship. Right? Sarah Rector, you about to learn who she is. How did Sarah Rector get her land? Okay. As part of the allotment process, each enrolled tribal member, including freedmen, received 100 acres of land. All right. Sarah was allotted land in Glenpool, Oklahoma, originally considered undesirable, dry, and unsustainable for farming. So they did her dirty, they thought. So they thought they did little Sarah Rector dirty by giving her and her part of her 160 acres of land. They thought it was undesirable, dry, and unsuitable for farming. So they thought they did her dirty. But by sheer luck, her parcel sat on one of the largest oil deposits in the state. All right? So do y'all see where this is going? So they try to do the sis dirty. Dirty. Backfire. So let me see, I got a question here. Question is, Ron, did you see the latest court ruling of the Supreme Court about this? You know what? I was supposed to play that first. So before I go any further on my homegirl, my sister, thanks for reminding me. Let's get it.
In a landmark decision, the Muskogee Creek Nation Supreme Court ordered citizenship for Creek Freedmen. Thanks for joining us tonight at 6. I'm TJ Eckert.
I'm Naomi Kidd. I've been covering this story for years, even sitting through arguments in front of the Supreme Court just 43 days ago. Today, I dug through the court order and talked with an attorney who says this decision is decades in the making.
It's a joyous occasion.
Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons represents Rhonda Grayson and Jeff Kennedy. The pair applied for citizenship into the Muskogee Nation in 2019, but were denied because their relatives were on the Dawes Freedmen rolls, not the blood rolls. Wednesday, the Muskogee Creek Nation Supreme Court said they will be citizens because the Treaty of 1866 guarantees it.
And I just appreciate the Supreme Court for looking at the law and applying the law as it's written.
Demario has been at the center of this fight for years, and it's deeply personal for him.
And to know that when I was born a Creek citizen, and now because of this decision, I can once again become a Creek citizen.
He told me his great-great-great-great-grandfather helped negotiate the Treaty of 1866 between the Muskogee Nation and the federal government. It grants citizenships to Creeks of African descent who were primarily the tribe's enslaved people. But in 1979, the Muskogee Nation Constitution added a citizenship clause, saying members had to have relatives on the blood rolls. 46 years later, this Supreme Court decision struck that down, saying, quote, "Are we, as a nation, bound to treaty promises made so many years ago? Today, we answer in the affirmative because this is what Muskogee law demands.
We want so badly that this era could be over with, that we can reconcile with our nation.
The court order removes the by blood provision in the Muskogee Constitution and requires the Citizenship Board to apply the Treaty of 1866 to Jeff and Rhonda's case, letting them into the nation. It also says all future applicants who can prove a connection to the Dawes Rolls, either freedmen or blood, need to be approved as citizens.
What does that mean that they made sure that the next group is protected too?
Well, it means two things. One, it means that they understood the gravity of the
Yeah, so I was saying this is under the Trump administration. Does he get credit? I'm just asking. Maybe not, maybe so.
situation. Number two, it says that this issue again can be behind all of us Black Creeks or Creek Freedmen, and we can just go by the term of Creek. Just let us be who we are.
DeMario
Peace,
says the
Lamont.
ruling upholds the Muskogee Nation's sovereignty, since the same treaty was used to justify the landmark McGirt ruling upholding tribal jurisdiction.
They understood that this treaty, by protecting Article 2 of the treaty, you protect the entire treaty.
The decision would grant the freedmen access to all benefits of tribal members.
DeMario told me he plans to reach out to Principal Chief David Hill to see how they can start the
I hate that
reconciliation
thing.
process. I did reach out to the Muskogee Nation after the decision. They said in part, quote, "We are currently reviewing the order to understand its basis as well as its implications for our processes." I do have their full statement for you in this story on our website at kjrh.com.
All right. So let's get back to a Creek Freedman woman, a little girl, Sarah Rector. So let's go back. Go back, family. So Sarah Rector was a Creek Freedman, okay? And she was awarded a land allotment, 160 acres of land, all right? They thought they gave her a bunch of undesirable dry land that was unsuitable for farming, and it was, but it was great for oil extraction. You see what I'm saying? So, but by sheer luck, her parcel sat on one of the largest oil deposits in the state. Let's read about her story, right? I know nobody really heard of Sarah Rector. I never heard of her until it came across my research table. FBA News and Updates. Oil wealth. In 1913, oil was discovered on her land by the crushing Drumright oil field. The lease of her land to oil companies brought massive royalties, making her extremely wealthy, earning up to $300,000 a year, equivalent to over $8 million a year today. She was dubbed by the media as the richest Black girl in America. You see what happens when you try to do us dirty? We get clean with money. You dig? We get clean with money. Now, here's the question for FBA Ronnie. Did they steal it back? Well, guardian and racial exploitation, legal requirement. Because Sarah was a minor, Oklahoma courts appointed a white guardian to manage her state. T.J. Porter, a local white man, so regular dusty hobo. So when folks disrespect us and talk about what we don't have today, and you're reading while a lot of us are in a certain financial rut, you're reading it, and people act like this never happened. So this was a commonplace in Oklahoma and other states at the time. Black minors were assumed legally incompetent to manage wealth. Damn. So let's talk about it. So exploitation concerns. White guardians often mismanage or legally seize Black children's oil wealth. Sarah was one of many. Newspapers began to raise questions about her treatment. Even Booker T. Washington and the NAACP got involved to investigate potential abuse or financial manipulation, right? So there were disturbing reports suggesting that white men tried to marry her for access to her money despite her being a child. Can y'all imagine that? So they try to push street harassment on us. Just being polite, trying to get a beautiful sister number. And these white men, they took street harassment on another level. How you doing, Sarah? Marry me, okay? I need that shmoney. Okay, listen. Despite her being a child, and you guys got a nerve to be mad at bad boys come out and play when these guys get a pass. Despite her being a child, they trying to marry this woman illegally, statutory, RAPE, just to steal her money. So do something criminal just to do something criminal afterwards. We steal her money. Crazy, yeah. So how she live? You guys are asking, how she live with all that money? Florida Evans, how did she live with all that money? Her family later moved to Kansas City, where she lived in a mansion and received a better education. Sarah continued to own land and receive oil royalties into adulthood. Despite the early exploitation, she retained much of her wealth, married twice, had children, and lived relatively well, although not without constant challenges due to systemic racism. Okay, so let's go over the legacy of Sarah Rector. Not cool with that? Sarah's case remains a symbol of Black resilience, exploitation, and buried history. Her story is often referenced in conversations about Black land ownership, wealth suppression of foundational Black Americans, the legacy of the Dawes Act and tribal politics, guardianship abuses in Oklahoma's oil boom era. Let's talk about the connection to the Creek Nation today. Although Sarah's family were citizens of the Creek Nation, their designation as freedmen has become controversial in modern tribal politics. Many Creek freedmen descendants have been stripped of their tribal rights, even though the 1866 treaty guaranteed citizenship. So all of y'all illegals, are y'all fighting for Sarah Rector? Are y'all fighting for the Creek freedmen? They got an 1866 signed treaty guaranteed citizenship, and they've been stripped of it. So are we still all in this together? You see what I'm saying? Oh, yeah, y'all didn't fight for this. And these are legal. This is a real signed document, agreement, citizenship, guaranteed. They didn't get it. They got stripped of it. Where's that energy that you're asking from us? Exactly. Sarah's life sits at the intersection of Black, Native, and American history and remains under-discussed in mainstream education. All right, let's bring it back. Tribal status, her tribal status. Creek freedmen listed on Dawes Rolls, not Creek by blood. Land allotment, given 100 acres via Dawes Curtis Act process. Oil discovery, 1913, made her millionaire. Exploitation, white guardian appointed. NAACP, investigated abuse. Wealth, lived in Kansas City. Retained income until adulthood. Something happened. Legacy, exposes systemic abuse of Black wealth and freedmen marginalization. Right? What y'all think about Sarah Rector, richest Black girl in America? And yeah, they didn't mention this part, but I know this to be true. I got a video on this. So she was so rich, white folks were like, yo, how's she getting all this money? So the media started to lie and said she was a white girl, right? Because white folks were like, yo, how did she get all this money? They were attracting those folks that want to have their own white cities. At that point, they had their own white cities. But the folks today want their own white cities. She was attracting them to her city. How do you have all this money? So yes, there is something with Black wealth and white people, but they just can't stand to see it. So don't be a bad boy. Don't be a bad girl. Don't be Dr. Pill and get that money back. You dig? Have to maintain your wealth, generational wealth. Israelite 1865 in the building. Foundational Black Americans are the indigenous people of this land. The so-called natives are migrants from Eurasia and Mongolia who got trapped here after the land bridge got washed out. That's what Carlos Maggis put in the chat. Justicegreenwood.org, Hustle Network, put that in the chat to look up. Okay, what else we got? Them tribes is Fig, Her, Peepow, Word Creek. They don't want to separate when we got stacks. Right. All that racism all that, I want to kill you out the door. It's like, hey, can we get married? Asking a 13-year-old girl, can we get married? Isn't that crazy? They gave her white guardianship because black black minors were considered incompetent legally to manage money. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. They gave her a white guardian. So that's it on this one, man. I'm going to do a short one. So when people want to look, this is history. When I do history, I don't want it to be long, 2 hour. I want it to be a short one. People can just reference it, maybe watch it over, maybe next year. Hey, I heard something about Sarah Rector, the Creek Freedmen. Let me watch that unbiased Ron video from FBA News Updates and just catch up. And you don't see a 3 hour video. You just see like a little 20, 30, 40-minute video. I could do that. All right, so the next live in a bit, it's gonna be a reaction. It's gonna be a reaction. It's gonna be funny. Okay. All right. So family, I'll see ya in maybe 20 minutes.